The emergency beacon cut through the darkness of space like a dying scream. Deep in the communication center of the human space station Aurora, Lieutenant Kim Nara jerked awake at her monitoring post. The alien transmission crackled with static and desperation. All species... Please respond. Solani Confederation under attack. World's burning... Need help. Offering all trade routes. All technology... Anyone who can fight. Nara's hands shook as she recorded the message. In 3 years of deep space monitoring, she had never heard anything like this. The voice speaking broken galactic standard carried pure terror. Behind the words, she could hear explosions and screaming. She pressed the emergency alert button. Within minutes, Commander Lee Minho burst into the communications room, still pulling on his uniform jacket. His dark eyes scanned the translation, displays showing the alien message. "Where did this come from?" Minho demanded. "Sector 47 Delta, sir," Nara replied, checking her instruments twice to be sure. "But that sector is marked as restricted in our database." Minho frowned. 6 months ago, human explorers had discovered an ancient alien computer drifting in space. Most of its files were locked, but they had managed to decode basic star maps. Those maps showed vast regions marked with warnings in dozens of alien languages. Sector 47 Delta carried the most frightening label of all. Quarantine Zone, Deathworld Species. The door slid open, and Admiral Park Ji-sung entered, followed by his senior staff. Park was a veteran of humanity's bloodiest conflicts, with scars across his face and hands that never quite healed. He listened to the alien message 3 times before speaking. "How many ships can reach that sector?" Park asked. "The entire Third Fleet, sir," replied Colonel Yang Hana, consulting her tablet. 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, support vessels. We could be there in 4 days. Park nodded grimly. Prep for immediate departure. Full battle configuration. Meanwhile, across the galaxy in the Zalani system, Council Leader Vet7 watched his world die. Through the massive windows of the orbital command center, he could see the Vorthok swarm approaching like a living plague. The alien bioships moved in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with dark energy. "How many colonies have we lost?" Veth7 asked, his voice barely a whisper. 17 worlds, sir, replied his aide Jeth4. The Vorthok consume everything. Plants, animals, even the soil itself. They leave nothing but empty rock. The Zalani had tried everything. Their powerful shields meant nothing against weapons that ate through metal. Their advanced computers could not calculate defenses against enemies that adapted instantly to every attack. Their peaceful nature had never prepared them for something that viewed entire civilizations as food. "Any response to our distress signal?" Vest7 asked, desperately. Jeth4's ears drooped. "One response, sir, from the restricted sectors." Every Zalani in the command center went silent. The restricted sectors were legends whispered in dark corners of space. Ancient warnings spoke of worlds so violent that their inhabitants were quarantined from civilized space. No peaceful species had ever made contact with a death world and survived to tell about it. "We have no choice," Veth7 said finally. "Send coordinates for a meeting. Neutral space." The human fleet arrived at the meeting point first. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship Soul's Pride, watching the alien vessel approach through the view screen. The ship was beautiful, all smooth curves and elegant lines. It looked more like a work of art than a military vessel. "No weapons, signatures," reported the tactical officer. "Actually, sir, I don't think they have any weapons at all." Park raised an eyebrow. "None. Their ship seems designed for exploration and trade, sir. I'm reading advanced sensors, communication arrays, but nothing that could hurt anyone." When the Zalani delegation came aboard, Park understood immediately why the distress call had sounded so hopeless. The aliens were tall and thin, with large gentle eyes and soft fur covering their bodies. They moved like herbivores, always watching for danger, but never expecting to fight it. Ambassador Keth9 led their group, his translator device struggling with human language. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice trembling. "We did not know if anyone would answer." "We answered," Park replied simply. "Tell us about your enemy." The briefing that followed made even hardened human soldiers uncomfortable. The Vorthok were not just conquerors, they were consumers. Their bioships literally ate other vessels, growing stronger with each victory. Their hive mind learned from every battle, adapting instantly to new weapons and tactics. They had swept across Zalani space like wildfire, consuming 17 civilized worlds in just 2 months. "We tried to evacuate," Keth9 explained, his ears flat against his head. "But they follow the refugee ships. They want to consume everything living." Park studied the tactical displays showing Vorthok fleet movements. The enemy ships moved with perfect coordination, their attacks precisely calculated for maximum destruction. They were everything human military doctrine warned against: adaptive, relentless, and completely unified in purpose. "When will they reach your homeworld?" Park asked. 3 days, Keth9 whispered. "Maybe less." Park nodded and turned to his officers. "Signal the fleet. We leave for Zalani space immediately. Full combat readiness." As the human ships prepared for battle, neither species realized they had completely misunderstood each other. The Zalani expected to meet fellow peaceful beings who might offer sanctuary. The humans expected to find a standard military threat, requiring standard solutions. Both assumptions would prove dangerously wrong. The diplomatic station New Harmony floated in neutral space between the human and Zalani fleets. Captain Han Soman straightened her uniform and checked her sidearm one final time before entering the meeting chamber. She had been chosen to represent humanity because of her diplomatic training, though her definition of diplomacy still involved carrying weapons. Ambassador Keth9 waited inside the chamber with 3 other Zalani officials. When the humans entered, all 4 aliens took a step backward. The humans looked exactly like the descriptions in their ancient databases: bipedal predators with forward-facing eyes and visible teeth. Each human carried at least 2 weapons openly, and their ship leaked radiation that would poison most known life forms. "Welcome," Keth9 said through his translator, trying to keep his voice steady. "We are grateful you answered our call for help." Captain Han smiled, showing her teeth. The Zalani flinched. "We came as soon as we received your message. Our fleet is ready to engage the enemy." "Your fleet appears very militaristic," observed Dr. Yethdu, the Zalani science officer. His scanner showed impossible readings from the human ships. "Are those nuclear weapons?" "Istandagi." Armimin Han replied casually. "Each ship carries enough firepower to crack a moon. We also have biological weapons, chemical agents, and some experimental stuff we're still testing." The Zalani delegation exchanged horrified glances. These creatures spoke of world-ending weapons, like they were discussing the weather. Dr. Yethtu's scanner began displaying warning symbols he had never seen before. "According to our database," Keth9 said carefully, "your species originates from a Class 12 death world. We believed such planets could not support intelligent life." Han laughed. "Earth isn't that bad. Sure, we have poisonous air, deadly weather, and everything tries to eat everything else. But you adapt." "Poisonous air," whispered Jethfor, the communications specialist. "Oxygen," Han explained. "Highly reactive gas, burns through metal, causes aging, can explode if you're not careful. Most of the galaxy can't breathe it." The cultural divide became clear when they began discussing tactics. Captain Han activated a holographic display showing the approaching Vorthok fleet. To the Zalani, it looked like certain doom, hundreds of bioships moving in perfect formation. "We'll need to evacuate your remaining colonies," Keth9 said immediately. "Perhaps establish refugee camps in neighboring systems." "Evacuate?" Han looked confused. "Why would we evacuate? This is perfect. Perfect. Dr. Yethtu's scanner was now flashing red warnings. They outnumber your fleet 5 to 1. Exactly. Han grinned. They're bunched up together. Easy targets. We can hit them with everything at once. Major Choi Haeon, the fleet's tactical officer, joined the conversation. He studied the Vorthok formation with professional interest. Standard hive mind deployment. They'll adapt to our weapons after the first exchange, so we'll need to capture specimens for analysis. Capture specimens? Kathneen's translator struggled with the concept. You want to take prisoners? Not prisoners, Choi corrected. Test subjects. We'll need live Vorthok to study their biology, psychology, adaptation mechanisms. Standard procedure is to capture a few ships intact, interrogate the crew, run some experiments. The Zalani translator device started making warning sounds. The concept of deliberately capturing enemies for study did not exist in their language. Dr. Yethtu frantically consulted his database, looking for any reference to such practices. You experiment on other intelligent beings? Dr. Yethtu asked, his voice barely a whisper. Only enemies, Major Choi replied, as if that made it perfectly reasonable. We need to understand how they think, what they fear, how they make decisions. Basic military intelligence. The meeting was interrupted by alarms from both fleets. Long-range sensors had detected Vorthok scout ships approaching the system. Captain Han immediately activated her communicator. All ships, combat alert, prepare for first contact with hostile forces. Through the station's windows, they could see the human fleet spreading into attack formation. The ships moved like predators, their weapon systems coming online with visible energy discharges. The first Vorthok scout ship dropped out of hyperspace directly between the two fleets. It was a beautiful creature, its organic hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The ship's living sensors studied both fleets, transmitting data back to the main swarm. What happened next shocked everyone. The Vorthok scout ship, designed to analyze enemy capabilities and adapt accordingly, found itself completely confused by the human fleet. The bioship's sensors detected weapons that made no tactical sense, kinetic launchers that fired solid metal, chemical explosives that damaged the user's own ships, and energy weapons that seemed designed more for intimidation than efficiency. The Scout's hive mind connection reported impossible readings. These creatures from the quarantine zone fought with weapons that violated basic military logic. Their ships leaked radiation, their crews showed no fear of death, and their tactical formations looked random. For the first time in the war, a Vorthok vessel hesitated. That moment of confusion was all Captain Han needed. Fire, she ordered. The human destroyer Busan Runner launched a single kinetic round. A simple chunk of metal accelerated to incredible speed. The Vorthok Scout's adaptive armor, designed to counter energy weapons and biological attacks, had no defense against something so primitive yet effective. The scout ship died instantly. Impossible, whispered Dr. Yethtu, watching the tactical display. The Vorthok always adapt, they never retreat. But the remaining scout ships were already jumping back to hyperspace, carrying confused reports to their hive mind. The data they'd transmitted made no sense. Deathworlders, who treated warfare like science, weapons that ignored tactical doctrine, and predators, who showed excitement rather than fear when facing overwhelming odds. Ambassador Kathneen stared at Captain Han, finally understanding what they had summoned to save their civilization. What have we done? He whispered. Han was smiling as she watched her fleet prepare for the coming battle. You called the right species, she said. We've been waiting our whole history for a fight like this. Admiral Park walked through the corridors of the Zalani military station Peaceful Sky, trying not to laugh at the name. The station was impressive in its own way, gleaming white walls, advanced computer systems, and technology that could monitor entire star systems. But it had no weapons beyond mining charges used for clearing asteroids. This is your main military base? Asked Lieutenant Colonel Yang Hanna, studying her scanner readings. "We do not believe in military bases," replied Station Commander Reth 5, his translator making his voice sound nervous. "This is a monitoring facility. We watch for dangers and help ships in distress." Yang looked at Admiral Park with raised eyebrows. The humans had expected to find a proper military installation with weapon emplacements, shield generators, and defensive systems. Instead, they found what looked like a very advanced rescue station. "Where do you keep your offensive weapons?" Yang asked the Zalani engineer, showing them around. "Offensive weapons?" Engineer Vethery looked confused. "We have mining equipment for asteroid clearing, some industrial cutting tools, emergency flares for signaling distress." Within 2 hours, Yang had converted half the mining equipment into improvised weapons. She welded metal plates onto mining charges to create directional explosives. The industrial cutting lasers became anti-ship weapons with simple targeting systems. Even the emergency flares were loaded into makeshift launchers. The Zalani engineers watched in fascination and horror as their peaceful tools became instruments of war. "Is this how your species thinks?" asked Vethery. "You see weapons in everything." "We see possibilities," Yang replied, testing the targeting system on a converted mining laser. "Your cutting tool is very precise. With some modifications, it can slice through enemy armor." The real breakthrough came when Captain Kim Taiho captured a damaged Vorthok fighter that had strayed too close to the station. The bioship was beautiful and terrifying. Its living hull pulsed with dark energy, and its organic weapons had carved through 3 Zalani patrol ships before human fighters disabled its engines. "We should study it from a safe distance," suggested Dr. Yethtu, setting up scanning equipment. "These creatures are dangerous, even when wounded." Captain Taiho ignored the suggestion. He gathered his Marines and walked directly toward the captured ship, carrying plasma-cutting tools and restraint devices. "Safe distance doesn't teach you anything useful," he said. "We're going inside." The Zalani watched in horror as human Marines cut through the bioship's hull like it was made of paper. The ship's living tissue tried to heal itself, but the humans simply cut faster. Within minutes, they had carved an entrance and disappeared inside the alien vessel. "The creature inside is wounded," protested Dr. Yeftu. "It requires medical attention according to galactic law." "It'll get medical attention," Taiho's voice crackled through the communicator. "Right after it tells us how many ships are in the main fleet." The sounds coming from inside the bioship made the Zalani delegation very uncomfortable. They could hear human voices asking questions in broken Vorthok language, mixed with sounds that their translators could not interpret. After 20 minutes, the Marines emerged dragging an unconscious Vorthok pilot. "Interesting species," Taiho reported to Admiral Park. "Hive mind connection, but individual consciousness still intact. It's terrified of being separated from the swarm." "That's useful information." The captured Vorthok, when it regained consciousness, began broadcasting panic signals that rippled through the approaching enemy fleet. For the first time in the war, the hive mind experienced something it had never felt before, genuine fear of capture rather than death. "They're afraid of us," observed Ambassador Keth9, watching the communication intercepts. "But why?" "They have never feared Zalani forces. Because we're different," Admiral Park explained. "Your people fight to protect themselves. We fight to win. When we capture enemies, we learn from them. That terrifies a hive mind that depends on predictability." The main Vorthok scouting force arrived 3 hours later, 50 bioships moving, in perfect formation. Their hive mind had analyzed the destruction of their scout and prepared countermeasures for every weapon the humans had used. They expected a standard defensive engagement. What they got was coordinated chaos. The human fleet broke apart like a pack of wild animals. Ships attacked from impossible angles, using maneuvers that should have destroyed their own crews. The Destroyer Daegu Storm rammed a bioship head-on while its crew cheered over open communication channels. The cruiser Incheon Pride used its main guns to carve insulting messages into nearby asteroids, visible to the entire Vorthok fleet. What military doctrine is this? The Vorthok Prime Node demanded through captured transmissions. It's called making things up as we go, replied Captain Han over the open channel. Welcome to Deathworlder combat. But the most disturbing thing for the Vorthok was the music. Every human ship broadcasts different types of Earth music at maximum volume. Heavy metal, classical symphonies, children's songs, and experimental jazz. The cacophony completely disrupted the hive mind's psychic communication network. The Zilani watched in amazement as their peaceful mining station became a fortress. Human engineers had mounted weapon systems on every surface, created firing positions from storage containers, and turned their civilian ships into escort vessels, bristling with improvised guns. Your people adapt very quickly, observed Station Commander Reth 5. Adaptation is survival, Park replied, watching his ships tear apart the Vorthok formation. In our galaxy, you adapt or you die. The surviving Vorthok ships retreated in confusion, their hive mind struggling to process tactical data that made no logical sense. For the first time since the war began, the unstoppable swarm had been stopped. The Zilani were learning that salvation had come with a price. They were now allied with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The main Vorthok fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a living nightmare. 300 bioships spread across the darkness, their organic hulls pulsing with adapted defenses against every weapon the humans had used. Each ship was the size of a city, grown from the consumed remains of 17 Zilani worlds. Admiral Park stood in his command center, aboard the Soul's Pride, surrounded by human officers and terrified Zilani observers. Through the massive view screen, the enemy fleet looked like a disease spreading across space. Their formation was perfect, their movements coordinated by a hive mind that had learned from every previous battle. They're ready for us this time, reported Captain Lee Geo from the reconnaissance squadron. Their bioarmor shows adaptations to kinetic weapons, energy beams, and explosive devices. They've countered everything we used before. Ambassador Kathleen watched the tactical display with growing horror. There are so many of them. How can we possibly fight this? Admiral Park smiled grimly. We don't fight them the same way twice. Colonel Lee, initiate Operation Sonic Boom. What happened next would have been considered insane by any civilized military force. Every human ship began broadcasting Earth music at maximum volume through external speakers. But not the same music. Each vessel played something completely different. The destroyer, Busan Runner, blasted heavy metal music that made the station walls vibrate. The cruiser Jeju Storm played classical symphonies at volumes that could be heard across vacuum. The medical ship Healing Light broadcast children's lullabies mixed with cooking show soundtracks. The flagship itself played experimental jazz that hurt human ears, let alone alien ones. This is your battle strategy? Asked Dr. Yef-2, covering his ears against the noise. Psychological warfare, replied Captain Park Minji, commander of the Marine Forces. We're not just fighting their ships, we're attacking their minds. The effect on the Vorthok was immediate and devastating. Their Hive mind communication system, which relied on psychic frequencies, became completely scrambled by the chaotic audio assault. Bioships that had moved in perfect formation began drifting apart as different nodes tried to filter different types of music. The Vorthok adapted quickly, developing audio dampeners and psychic shields. So the humans switched tactics completely. Every ship activated its external display screens and began showing rapid sequences of images, Earth's most dangerous predators, natural disasters, horror movie clips, and random pictures that made no tactical sense. When the visual attacks stopped working, the humans tried smell-based warfare. They vented different atmospheric combinations into space, some that smelled like rotting food, others like flowers, some like industrial chemicals. The vortex-sensitive chemical sensors were overloaded, trying to analyze threats that weren't actually threats. They adapt to everything we throw at them, reported Major Kim Sung from the front lines. Then we give them too much to adapt to, Park replied. All ships, execute Operation Kitchen Sink. What followed was the most chaotic battle in recorded galactic history. Human ships attacked with different weapons every few minutes. Laser cannons fired for 30 seconds, then switched to kinetic rounds. Plasma charges mixed with electromagnetic pulses. Missile salvos were followed by ramming attacks. The Marines launched boarding operations that changed tactics halfway through. Some teams fought room by room through bioships, using conventional weapons. Others simply vented entire sections to space and walked in wearing environmental suits. One group set their target ship on fire and watched to see what would happen. The Zilani watched in amazement as their peaceful equipment was converted into weapons of war. Mining drones became kamikaze attackers loaded with explosives. Agricultural ships started spraying bioships with industrial fertilizer that ate through organic hulls. Even their diplomatic vessel opened fire with mining lasers welded to its hull. Your species fights without any standard pattern, observed Station Commander Reth 5, studying the battle displays. That's exactly the point, Admiral Park explained. Predictable tactics get you killed. The Vorthok adapt to patterns, so we don't use patterns. The most effective human tactic was randomness itself. Ship captains made attack decisions by flipping coins. Marine assault teams used children's games to pick their targets. The entire fleet occasionally went completely silent, just to confuse the enemy. Then erupted in coordinated attacks from unexpected directions. The Vorthok hive mind began showing signs of strain. Their bioships designed to adapt to logical threats started malfunctioning when faced with completely illogical human behavior. Some vessels tried to adapt to heavy metal music by growing sound dampeners, only to be attacked by ships playing classical music. Others developed defenses against kinetic weapons, just as the humans switched to energy beams. Their network is fragmenting, reported Lieutenant Kim Nara from the communications station. Different nodes are developing contradictory strategies. The breakthrough came when Captain Kim Min-ho's destroyer launched its own shuttlecraft as kinetic weapons, with Marine teams riding them like guided missiles into enemy bioships. The sight of humans using their own vehicles as ammunition while laughing over open channels sent waves of confusion through the Vorthok collective consciousness. They used their own ships as weapons. The Vorthok Prime Node broadcast in disbelief. When necessary, Captain Minho replied cheerfully, as his Marines carved their way through the enemy vessel's interior. The Zilani, inspired by human recklessness and facing their civilization's final moments, began abandoning their peaceful nature. Trade ships rammed bioships, agricultural drones swarmed enemy fighters. Their monitoring station started using its sensor arrays as weapons, overwhelming Vorthok ships with focused electromagnetic bursts. For 18 hours, the battle raged across 3 star systems. The Vorthok fleet, caught between human chaos and newly aggressive Zilani forces, began to collapse under the weight of their own confused adaptations. The final Vorthok fleet gathered above Zealand Prime like a dark storm cloud. 200 bioships, all that remained of their once mighty swarm, had learned from every previous battle. Their hulls showed adaptive armor against human weapons. Their formation patterns were designed to counter chaotic attacks, and their hive mind had developed new strategies to handle unpredictable enemies. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching the enemy fleet through cracked view screens. Half his ships were destroyed, or too damaged to fight. The remaining human vessels looked like they had been through a meat grinder, with hull breaches sealed by emergency patches and weapon systems held together with spare parts. "Sir," They're ready for everything we've used before, reported Captain Lee Hyok from his battered reconnaissance ship. Their bioarmor shows adaptations for kinetic weapons, energy beams, explosive devices, even our psychological warfare tactics. Ambassador Keth9 floated beside Park in the command center, his fur singed from the battle damage. Below them, Z Prime glowed with the lights of billions of refugees who had nowhere else to run. This was their last stand. What do we do now? Keth9 asked quietly. They have learned to counter all your strategies. Admiral Park studied the enemy formation for a long moment, then smiled. We don't use strategies at all. All ships prepare for Operation Playground rules. Sir? Questioned Colonel Yang Hana from our battle station. No coordination, no battle plan, no communication between ships. Every captain fights however they want. Make everything up completely as you go. The human officers looked at each other with grim understanding. This was not military tactics. This was pure chaos. Captain Han Somin laughed over the channel. Finally, we get to fight like real Deathworlders. The Zilani delegation stared in shock. You are abandoning all military organization. We're embracing our nature, Park replied, watching his fleet spread out randomly across space. We come from a world where everything tries to kill everything else. We don't follow rules. We survive by making new ones every second. The final battle began without warning or ceremony. Human ships attacked like a pack of wild animals with no formation, no predetermined targets, and no concern for military logic. The destroyer Daegu Storm played dead until 3 bioships approached, then erupted in devastating close-range fire while its crew sang drinking songs. The cruiser Gwangju Thunder flew impossible spiral maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart, held together only by human engineering and pure stubbornness. Captain Kim Minho's badly damaged vessel, Bison Runner, actually launched its own escape pods as guided missiles, with volunteer Marines riding them into the heart of enemy by the sight of humans using their life-saving equipment as weapons while shouting battle cries confused the Vorthok hive mind beyond calculation. They use survival equipment as attack weapons. The Vorthok Prime Node broadcast in bewilderment. When it's the only thing left, Minho replied cheerfully as his Marines carved through enemy hull plating with hand tools. The most devastating attack came from the medical ship, Healing Light. Captain Park Minji converted the vessel's surgical equipment into precision weapons, using medical scanners to target Vorthok weak points and surgical lasers to perform very non-medical operations on enemy ships. The Vorthok hive mind, designed to adapt to logical military threats, began experiencing something like a mental breakdown. Their bioships developed contradictory defenses as different nodes tried to counter completely random human tactics. Some vessels grew heavy armor just as humans switched to precision cutting tools. Others developed jamming systems against communication, equipment that humans were using as improvised weapons. Their network is arguing with itself, reported Lieutenant Kim Nara from her damaged console. Different nodes are sending conflicting adaptation orders. That was when the Zilani shocked everyone, including themselves. Station Commander Reth watched his peaceful people face extinction and made a decision that went against millions of years of evolution. All civilian ships, attack pattern, ... whatever you want. Fight like the humans taught us. Across Zilani's space, mining vessels rammed, bioships at full speed, agricultural drones loaded with fertilizer swarmed enemy fighters, their peaceful cargo eating through organic armor like acid. Trade ships opened their cargo bays and launched containers full of industrial equipment as improvised missiles. The diplomatic vessel Peaceful Negotiator surprised the Vorthok cruiser by opening fire with welded-on mining lasers while broadcasting children's music at maximum volume. Even the evacuation ships turned around and joined the fight, using their passenger compartments to ram enemy vessels. By our ancestors, whispered Ambassador Keth9, watching his people abandon pacifism for the first time in their recorded history. We are fighting like Deathworlders. The Vorthok fleet, caught between human chaos and newly aggressive Zilani forces, began to collapse. Their hive mind could not process the tactical impossibility of civilized species fighting like barbarians. When a Zilani hospital ship destroyed a Vorthok battlecruiser, using surgical equipment as weapons, the enemy collective consciousness suffered complete failure. The last 50 Vorthok ships fled into deep space, broadcasting warnings across all frequencies. Alert all nodes. Sector contains Deathworlders and infected civilized species. Avoid at all costs. Cannot adapt to complete tactical randomness. 3 months later, Admiral Park found himself in the strangest situation of his career, sitting in a conference room with representatives from 12 different alien species, trying to explain human military philosophy to the Galactic Council. Your species treats warfare as entertainment, observed Council Prime Zeth Alpha, through her universal translator. Not entertainment, Park corrected. Survival. Where we come from, you adapt or die. The Vorthok couldn't adapt to complete unpredictability. The Council's final report was brief, but definitive. Species classification. Humans, Deathworlders, Class 12. Diplomatic status, Alliance strongly recommended. Military assessment. Never fight these people. At the bottom, someone had added a handwritten note. They turned a pacifist species into warriors in 3 days. Handle with extreme caution.